אולי אפשר להשאיר את המפה אפילו אורן. So, David Ben-Gurion once said that the greatest miracle happened in 1948 war was that we were not relying on miracles. That's a nice one, right?
Yes.
Nice one. But he said if I need to pick one, it would have been without a doubt the fact that our enemies were not so united. They were not cooperating with one another. There were plans. Guys, are you all standing? Doing good? Yeah, okay? Okay. There were plans how very simply they could conquer the land and how 5 armies could finish the state of Israel before it even started. But then, so the Jordanians, they wanted to have a grip in Jerusalem. So they went straight to Jerusalem. And then the Egyptians, instead of going straight on the coastline, okay, they needed to split because they didn't want the Jordanians to have such an achievement as taking over Jerusalem. So the Egyptians, instead of walking across the coastline, they needed to split. And then half of the Egyptian army went on the coastline and the other half went from Bir Saba, Be'er Sheva today, and northwards on the Judea lines up until Ramat Rachel, southern from Jerusalem. So the Egyptian troops needed to split into 2. Okay? Now I am coming from Kibbutz Yad Mordechai. Kibbutz Yad Mordechai was right here, was a very big battle site in 1948 war. אנחנו נהיה שם ביחד בקורס? Yes, we will be there together in the summer, in July, and so the Egyptians were moving northwards. Meanwhile, before the Egyptians ever got here in mid-May, the Haganah, they exploded the bridge, okay? They exploded the bridge, and then Ad Halom, meaning up until here, the Egyptians got in 1948 war. They got here, the bridge was destroyed, and then they stopped here with their caravan of hundreds of vehicles and tank and artillery. They were forced to stop here as they couldn't go northwards. And then they got here in late May 1948, and the 1948 war we divided into 2. So we have the first part of the 1948 war, which is not relevant to our story. This is what we call the Civil War. Okay, the Civil War started at November 30, 1947. Okay, so 1948 war, we know that it started at late 47 and ended early 49. 1948 war started at late 1947, which is November 30, the day after the partition plan in New York of the UN. The day after started the civil war between the Jewish resistance to the Arab resistance, and fighting here until May 14th, 1948. On May 14th, David Ben-Gurion declared on Israel as an independent state. The Brits are leaving. And the day after, May 16, this is where started the second part of the war between Israel to the 5 armies. The 5 armies, we say in Hebrew, Slaim. Slaim is Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, Yarden, Mitzrayim. Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, Jordan, Egypt. Okay, 5 armies invading to Israel. And the Egyptians, as I said, so now we're talking about the early second part of the war, as the armies invading to Israel. And then we call it the narrow blanket. Okay, 5 armies invading, and there are not enough troops in Jerusalem. But if you send troops to Jerusalem, you're lacking troops down south. And if you send some down south, you're lacking in the north. And then the big dilemma of the 48 war. And on late May, the Egyptians got here. May 28 or so, they got here. The IDF is officially started. Unofficially, it will take it a few months to start. And then David Ben-Gurion said that this place must be taken. Why? Because the biggest Jewish city in 1948, so we have Jerusalem, But Tel Aviv is the beating heart of the Jewish state. And they knew that if the Egyptians will make it to Tel Aviv and the battles will take part in Tel Aviv, then we might have just lost the war. And this is why they explode the bridge before the Egyptians ever got here. And in early June, so it was actually June 1st, there was a battle called Mivtza Pleshet, Operation Pleshet, because this is the Pleshet coastline, and Ashdod was one of the Philistine city. Okay, Ashdod was not in the history, or in 48 was not a Jewish city back in the days, back then. And so the Pleshet operation, and then they were uniting the Givati and the Negev brigades. And this was the first battle where there was the Israeli Air Force in action. Now today, the Israeli Air Force is one of the finest Air Force in the world. The Israeli Air Force in 1st of June 1948 was kind of embarrassing. I'm talking about small planes, the ones you spray the fields with today with machine guns. This is what we're talking. They did very little damage, if any. But this is the first battle where Israeli Air Force airplanes were in use, and we're talking about 1,000 soldiers uniting together in order to push the Egyptians backwards. Now the Egyptians, which we will talk plenty more in Yad Mordechai, but we can also do it here, we are talking about the Negev under siege. So this is the Western Negev. You will be here in the course in Revivim. I suppose you will be. We will be in Yad Mordechai. This is Jewish towns that are surrounded by the Egyptian legions. The Egyptians, they went on the coastline up until here, up until Ashdod, okay? And the Rak Suida next to, not far away from Kiryat Gat of today. So the Western Negev is under siege, and the Egyptians made it up until here, Ad Halom, the Egyptians got. And Tel Aviv is right over here, okay? So we want to push them backwards, to push them south back to Egypt. And that's what Operation Pleshet is all about. And we're talking about one of the biggest, one of the largest operations of the IDF just started to be, with 1,000 soldiers cooperating in the battlefield, something they were not. So they used to fight in small units, but not in such a big units, and it was a big failure. Operation Pleshet was a big failure because of a few reasons. First of all, the Egyptian troops were about 3,000 soldiers, okay, with artillery, with armored vehicle, with tanks. The attacking troops were 1,000, okay? Now, there is some sort of a strategic formula. If you want to conquer, take over, or win, the attacking forces should be like 3 times more than the defensive troops in general, okay? Now we're talking the other way around. The attacking forces were outnumbered a lot, 1 to 3 to the defensive side. So if you want to succeed, you need to go in one force. But they split it into north, center, south, and they were splitting into 3 attacks, and it was a big disaster. We're talking about 50 soldiers who died in the attack, and 50 more got injured. How many we said that the attacking force was?
1,000.
900
left.
No, 1,000. So we have 100, like 10%. We lost 10%, and they couldn't force the Egyptian back, but 50 died, 50 injured, okay? So they failed to push the Egyptian southwards, but from Operation Pleshet and on, the Egyptians will not cross the Lachish. They will not go northwards from here. They will not go to Rishon LeZion. They will not go to Tel Aviv. We don't know if it is because, or if it's been not because of Operation Pleshet. We don't know. But what we do know is that it failed, but in a way it succeeded, because they haven't moved northwards from here. And it will take few more months, and only in late October, with Operation Yoav, where Beersheba will be taken. Late October and early November, the Egyptians will move northwards until the area of Uja el Khafir, Nitzana today, and from December 1948, all the Egyptian forces will be only in the Egyptian side. Okay, so here we're talking about the early stages of 1948 war, an attack that failed to push the Egyptians, but maybe perhaps succeeded in a way. We have here the bridge, the bridge of the train today, the old train, the old bridge that was here in the days of the battle.